All right, welcome everybody. This is our live Facebook that we're going to be going over how to rescue and restore a Bergere chair, or any chair for that matter. So I want to remind you to be sure and make comments and ask questions, because this is live. We're here in Memphis Central Standard Time at 3 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. So just to be able to show you, this is going to be the kit that we're going to send to you for the exact painting that I'm going to be doing today of all these colors of black one step, Selznick gray, and Bauhaus buff, along with your clean slate and your Mind Your Own Beeswax and your brushes. So you'll have everything here that if you make comments or if you ask questions, that will enter you into this contest, and we'll be mailing this out tomorrow after we make the announcement on Facebook. So what we want to be able to go over today is how to paint fabric, how to paint a chair frame, and what that process looks like by hand painting it. And Jean's also going to be here to show us how to use a sprayer, because it makes it a lot easier on doing a lot of your DIY projects. So let's come over here really quick and let's look at our chair. So as you saw in the before picture, I've got this covered up because I don't want you to see the reveal. I want to take you through the process first, and then you're going to be able to see this side, which I've done half of, and I've got it finished. So a lot of these chairs that you'll see will run maybe $15 or $20 on average at a garage sale or at an antique mall. They're in oversized chairs. Guys love these chairs because they're so comfortable. But a lot of times the furniture pieces like this really aren't a great quality, and the fabrics look a little had. Come over here and let me show you something really quick. I noticed this earlier. This area right here on this chair, it's actually not real wood. It looks like real wood, but it's actually particle board. That's going to make it even better to go back and actually be repainting. So what's the first thing we're going to do if we're going to do any type of project like this? We're going to have to clean it first. So I'm going to use a miniature here, unless we've got a larger one, of our clean slate. So that way, we want to make sure that we get all the grease and the grime off, because you don't want to be painting your chair unless you've cleaned it first. Before, I used to tell you to use things like clean slate, but that will not take all the grease and wax and grime off. The clean slate is perfect for that. Now, the only thing that we need to worry about cleaning is actually going to be the wood. In this case, the fabric is not necessary to clean. So I just want you to come back and go over all of the wood really well. I usually use a rag to get down in all the crevices. I'm not going to worry about this loose area right here that's kind of chewed up. So remember, this is live, so I want you to ask questions and make comments, so that way I can answer them live for you.
We have a comment from Lisa, who says that she has a dark upholstered chair that's been in her family for a long time, and she wants to paint it a color, but she's nervous. Do you have any advice for her?
Okay, that question's coming from Lisa, and she wants to know, she has an older chair that's a darker finish that's been in the family for a long time. And the great thing about it is, if it has sentimental, to me, you go back and you remember things in your childhood, or maybe you grew up with it, but if you're not going to use it in your home and it doesn't match per se, then it's time to redo it. And it doesn't mean that you're losing the value of that piece. Now, if it's something from maybe the 16th or the 17th or the early 18th century, I would probably say don't paint it. But we're talking about pieces the majority of the time that are from the 20s and the 30s, the 40s, all the way up, and a lot of these pieces are from the 90s. So, but if it's a piece that you love, it has sentimental value, but you're not using it, by all means paint it. And I really suggest working on smaller pieces before you become comfortable with it. This chair, we actually had people helping us in the studio that had never painted, and they see how easy it is. So let's just go over this real quick. Now, one of the colors that I'm going to be using today is Selznick gray. It's one of my favorite colors. It goes with everything. When I am painting the frame itself, I'm going to use the paint straight. But when I go to the fabric and I'm going to be painting the actual fabric, I am going to thin it. So we're going to go over that for just a minute. So So Lisa, be thinking about your piece, and I don't know if it has upholstery or not. I'd love for you to tell me that so that way we can talk about it. And I would love for you guys to share your pictures with me. So put those on Facebook, and our team will actually be looking at those pictures, and we'll give you advice on everything from colors to maybe what we might do to it. But I want you to think outside the box. A lot of times people think about the upholstery being one color and the frame of the chair being another color. I'm actually going to be painting this seat and the frame the same color on the seat. I want you to think of it being a little bit more interesting. So when I'm analyzing this chair, I decided to paint all of the frame, the wood frame, in Selznick gray. I decided to paint the seat and the R-pads in the same paint color, Selznick gray, but I decided to paint the back of the chair in Bauhaus buff and then make a darker stripe. So I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So I'm going to shake up my can, or in this case, my pot of paint. This pot of paint will cover this entire chair frame. So you don't have to worry about having a quart of paint. This will do all of it. So I just made sure that I shook it up really well. I'm going to come back over here and get my brush. Now, when I'm painting a chair frame or wood, I usually like using a nylon or a synthetic brush that's going to give you a much smoother finish. Make sure that you load up your brush well, but make sure too that it's not dripping. You want to offload the sides just a little bit, so that way you can hold the brush up and it's not going to be dripping. So we're going to go in and come over here. Make sure that that has air dried, that it doesn't still have the residue on it. Now, so I'm just going to lay this down. Let's see if you can get the shot in here so you can see this. You know, the cool thing about it is, remember, we've said this before, but we don't have to sand it. We don't have to strip it. You're just going to come back on top of this chair, just like I'm doing. It's so easy. To be honest with you, it's very calming. Think about being able to go outside and work on a chair, or for that matter, do what I did and just put down a drop cloth, because remember, with the one-step paint, it does not contain methanol. It doesn't have any VOCs, so there's no odor. And you very well can just sit up, if you want to, in the kitchen like this and paint this chair, or for your kitchen cabinets for that matter. All right, so don't forget, we're live. I want you to be sure and ask your questions.
Someone would like to know if you could explain the cleaning product again.
So the cleaning product, the question was, can you explain the cleaning product? It's Clean Slate, and the great thing about it is, if you want to just get a shot over here for me, Sharon, it's a Clean Slate product. It took us about 1.5 years to develop it, and what it does, it takes off grease and grime and residue, and a lot of the pieces that you're going to be rescuing and restoring, maybe they come from Habitat, or maybe they come from IKEA. And there is this oily residue on a lot of those things that I use the Clean Slate even when I'm cleaning galvanized sheet metal, or wood or resin. Anything that I'm going to be putting the one-step on, it gets that residue off that could act as a surfactant that would make the paint not adhere as well. The other great thing about it is, let's say you used another wax, maybe you've painted another piece of furniture and you wished you could repaint it another color. The great thing about it is the Clean Slate will actually take the wax off. If you want to change it up, then that way take the wax off and repaint it again. So it makes it perfect. Now, you see, I'm literally getting a lot of coverage on this piece and how easy it is. But now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to go in and paint the fabric itself. So let me paint on just a little bit more, because I've normally told you to do long, clean strokes on a piece like this that it's got a lot of carving. I just want to make sure that I pounce down in it so it gets down in the crevices, and then I'll feather it out like this. It's really that easy. I think the main thing is, look at the note. Also notice how I'm holding this brush. Notice how I'm not holding it up here. It's more awkward. I usually hold it a little bit closer so I've got more control over it as I lay that paint down. I'm also coming back to kind of feather it, but at the same time making sure that I've got really good coverage and no drips. Okay, so now let's go over here, and I want to show you what we're going to be doing as far as painting the fabric. Now, a lot of people, this pushes them over the edge. They're thinking, how is it possible to paint fabric? It's not going to look right. There are some caveats with painting fabric. You want to stay with cottons and linens and thinner fabrics. Now, a lot of you may say, well, that's upholstery fabric. That looks pretty thick. Yes, let's come back over here and look at this. It is pretty thick, but it's still an upholstery weight. It's not a velvet. It's not a mohair. You want to stay away from velvets and mohairs because they have what's called a nap, N-A-P. It's the thickness of the fabric. Let's stay with thinner fabrics, especially things like chinches. They're great. And even vinyl. You can clean vinyl with the clean slate and come right back on top of it with the one-step paint. The first thing you need to make sure you do is thin the paint where you're going to be painting the upholstery. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Selznick. I'm going to put it in this glass container here, only because I want you to be seeing what I'm doing. And I'm just going to take regular tap water, and I'm going to add about 20%. If you feel more comfortable with a measuring cup, that's fine, but it's kind of like cooking to me. I can tell by the consistency of the paint what is going to be about 20 to 30%. Now, the other thing I want you to do is we're going to mist the fabric. So, Jean, would you be able to bring me a mister? Is there one over here? Okay. So, let me show you. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm going to mist this fabric. Let's open this up so it's not quite so. Usually there's some that are, it'll do it on a wider stream. And I think this is, do I have one of those little small ones that are misters? Okay, so let me have somebody get me the mister. Great, thank you so much. Jean came to the rescue. Okay, so this is a mister. It's a finer mister. That spray is way too heavy of a stream, which I'm glad. Jean just fixed it for me. So great. So, all right, so let me just show you. Look how I'm misting the fabric like this. So why would you think I would mist the fabric? That's because that's going to open up the fibers of the cloth, and it's going to allow this paint to go on much smoother. So I'm going to mist it, and within, say, 20 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes, I don't want it to dry completely, so I need to start painting within 15 to 20 minutes. I can paint immediately after I spray it on there. So I've got my paint, I've thinned it with my tap water, I've made sure that it's stirred up really well. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. And then I've got my nylon brush, and I'm going to come back over here on my chair. So load up my brush. It's going to be a little bit thinner, so you're going to need to be careful. So as you're putting it on, this first coat is just going to be like a primer. I don't want you to put it on so thick that your paint is going to crack on the fabric. We're wanting just a nice sheer kind of coat that you're going to get some nice coverage, but a lot of people think because it's called one step, it's one coat. It's not. It's one step, meaning the process is one step. So I don't want you to put it on too thick. You're going to come back and want to make sure you do 2 coats when you're painting fabric, especially because this fabric color is so dark. So now I also want you to see something else. Gene's here. I asked him, I said, you know, a lot of people don't realize that you can spray the pieces, especially upholstery that we do, and I want you to show them how to use a sprayer. So Gene, do you want to come on and let's go over with everybody kind of what the idiosyncrasies are about a sprayer, how to use them, and to be honest with you, if they've not done it before, it's kind of scary.
Well, you know, this is our sprayer that we have that's made for chalk-based paint, such as ours, and it comes with 2 tips. We've got one tip for paint. It has a larger orifice, and then it also comes with another tip. It has a smaller orifice so that if you're spraying a clear coat that's a much thinner viscosity, it'll work great for that too. And all you have to do is just unscrew the collar, and you'll swap out the tips and put it back on, and you're ready to go.
All right, so the only thing, when you've taken this out of the box, what have you done?
Well, when it came in the box, it has a couple of pieces here. It'll look like this coming out of the box, and it literally just fits in and turns, and then has a little clip, and that ties it together, and you're ready to go.
So this is called an airless sprayer.
It is. It's an airless sprayer. Reminds me of the family of skunks that got together to have dinner, and the father said, "Let us spray." So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to spray some paint. So we're going to use the Celtic Gray, and that she was
I want
using.
y'all to know, we go through this, and when I tell him that I'm going to be teaching you how to paint upholstery, and would he come and I don't know. He doesn't tell me he's going to say these things, so it's just part of his personality. I guess it's why I fell in love with him to begin with.
So we're going to take the Celtic Gray, and what we don't want to pour straight into our bucket
Why
yet.
is that?
We want to try to first, we got to thin it just a little bit. And notice, because this has been opened before, we have a little bit of paint debris that's coming with it, and I'll show you how that's going to be addressed.
Remember to ask your questions. If you're worried about a sprayer, if you've not done anything like this before, now's your opportunity. We're live here in Memphis, so we want to make sure that Gina and I can answer your questions.
So once we've gotten the amount, and again, you don't have to use all your paint, just what you're going to need for the project. And then we want to add about 10% water to it. And stir
Now,
it
if I was
thoroughly.
going to be painting my fabric and I'm spraying it, I
still
need
want
to
it
come
down.
back to about 20% water.
You want to add a little bit more to that so it's not quite as thick.
As a rule, though, when we're spraying a piece of furniture, wouldn't you say that it's going to use about 20% more paint than if you're brushing it on?
Yes, because you're going to have overspray. You're going to have that overspray from the nozzle that you'll lose a little bit of product in the spraying process. So once we have that
Start up real good.
stirred well, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a cone strainer. This is just a paper cone strainer that you can get at any hardware store that
And
has
they
a
have
paint
these in the
department.
paint department at Ace, so when you go and you speak to your paint expert, they'll show you that they have paint strainers.
So now what we're going to do is pour it through the strainer.
So what is this doing?
And what that's doing, that's catching all of that debris that was from the paint when it had been opened, closed, probably been used several times, and so that paint dries that's around the collar, around the threaded edge.
If I've got a brand new can, though, do I need to strain it?
No, if you have a brand new one, you wouldn't need to strain it. We're
Okay.
just going to do it for the purpose of the fact that that had been opened.
Okay.
And why we're doing this is because we don't want that debris to get caught up into the air nozzles and the different tubing and things that the paint will go through, because if it does, it'll clog it up and you won't have a good spray experience.
Okay.
How would you recommend painting a cane back chair and why?
Oh, that's a good question.
We can use your sprayer. That way it's much easier. When you do a cane back, when you start to brush it, the cane's gonna catch the brush bristles and wanna load that paint up, and it'll start dripping. And so if you spray it, that'll overcome that problem.
You know, sprayers are also great for wicker. Anytime you have spindles, especially on the backs of chairs, a sprayer's great for that. So we do sell them at amyhowardhome.com. We have the sprayers on there, and we ship them, and a lot of our boutique retailers have them as well. But it's just a great tool for you to be able to use in a DIY project. Now, what Jean's getting ready to show you is actually just how to spray it, but remember, we could be spraying our chair too.
Yes, and I'm just gonna use it, this way you can see the application on the cardboard. Also, this tip can be adjusted. As it is now, with it in the horizontal position, you're going to spray with a vertical V. If I turn this 90 degrees, now in the vertical position, it's going to spray in a horizontal V. So it just depends on what you're doing and the surface, the shape, as to which way you want that to spray.
Yes.
Should you spray or brush your
That's a good question. That's a personal preference. As far as a kitchen island, should they spray it or should they brush it?
If you are wanting to save time, what I would do is I would paper off around that area and I would spray it because it's faster and you get a smoother finish. So I love spraying. Refinishing for years, we use large industrial professional spray equipment, so I love to spray.
It gives you a smoother finish. Sorry, it's a situation where we're here in the studio and we love what we do, but certain people here, they just tickle me. And so I apologize. But so what was the question again?
Should you
Spray that?
spray or paint your
Should you
kitchen
spray
island?
or paint your island? If you're comfortable after you're seeing Jean do it today, it's one of these things that you will use all the time. I enjoy painting. I love the brushing of it. I love the action. I find that's just very calming to me. But Jean enjoys spraying. It's going to give you a much smoother finish than brushing it on. So you might just get one and then try it on a small piece of furniture, or maybe just go to Restore and buy a cabinet door and test it, especially the color that you're thinking about using. You can get those doors for about $2. Remember to clean it first.
We have a comment from Dan. Dan loves Jean.
Thank you, Dan. Also, we've also got a little product right here, that screw thumb knob, that when you screw this in and out, it'll allow the trigger to go back further or not as far, which will let more or less product come out. So you will adjust this before you start your spraying. If I turn it clockwise, it'll allow me to pull the trigger back further, more product comes out. If I turn it counterclockwise, then trigger won't go back as far and let less product out. So we'll test it. Cardboard is the least expensive, easiest way to check. So right now it's coming out just a little too fast, so I'm going to counterclockwise so that it won't go back quite as far. Combination of a couple of things. One, the thickness or thinness of the paint. Two, how much product is coming out will make the difference how far in or out you are. Usually about 8 inches is a good
Okay.
rule of thumb.
Okay.
And
So you see about how close he is and how quickly you would literally be able to paint a piece of furniture. So awesome. Jean, thank you for showing us that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So let's go back over to our chair for just a minute. Do we have any more questions, Chandler? Are we good? Okay. So here I've got my paint that I had actually thinned earlier. Now, let's look at it really quick. It started to set up and dry. Remember with the one-step paint, it's going to dry within about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, on a piece of furniture, on my chair frame, it's going to be different than the fabric. It's wet and it's going to hold that moisture longer. So you're going to want to do the whole chair and probably let the upholstery part dry for about an hour to an hour and a half. And then come back and you're going to put on a second coat. I just wanted to show you, as far as continuing to brush this, what this looks like, because I want to make sure that I don't get it too thick. Now, here's a major mistake that a lot of people make when they paint fabric. They forget to thin it with the water, so we're not going to forget that, but guess what the next thing is? They don't think about sanding upholstery, and people will say, well, I didn't think you were supposed to have to sand with the one-step. You don't sand it to prime the surface to use, but when you're painting fabric, it's very important to sand in between your layering of coats with 400 sandpaper, and then sand on your last coat. So I wanted to show you just a little bit more what that looked like, and then I'm going to show you the back, how I'm going to paint it a different color before I show you the reveal.
Amy, we have a question.
Yes.
Does the fabric feel stiff after painting it, and does it need to be sealed?
Yes, whose question was that?
Sheila?
Sheila. Okay, great question, Sheila. Yes, after you paint the fabric, it's much like kind of whiskers. when you put a solution on or soap to raise those whiskers, the fabric is going to have a tendency to be rougher. That's why after it dries, I want you to come back with 400 sandpaper, and I want you to lightly use the sandpaper over it, and it's going to soften it almost instantly. Then come back and put on your second coat. Still, you're using the paint that has about 20% water in it. Make sure that it's not too thick. And then lightly sand it again, and then we're going to wax it. So, come over here. I want to show you one last thing before I show you what I've done. Now, the back of the chair, remember I said I'm going to do it in Bauhaus Buff. I want you to think outside of the box. I don't want you painting the upholstery all one color and then the frame all one color. The cool thing about it is with the one-step paint, it allows you to be able to do all kinds of different things. So this is the Bauhaus. This is one of our top selling cream colors. Remember too, that we do have a lot of great boutique retailers all over the country that teach hands-on workshops. It's a great experience to have with people in your community and learn how to paint furniture and redecorate your home. But we also have at Ace Hardware's to where you can go and they will custom mix the one-step paint in hundreds of colors for you. So I'm just going to grab this brush that I had here because I don't want to take the time to clean that one out, and I'm just going to show you on this fabric over here how I'm going to come in. I'll cut it in next to this trim. Now in reality I would have gone on and painted the frame and taped it off when I got ready to paint my upholstery, but for time limitations here I wanted to be able to show you. Look at the coverage on this. That's why in the kit today, if you continue to watch this and make comments through tomorrow and ask questions, your name will go in for the drawing to be able to win this chair restoration kit so you can do the same project that we're doing. We're also going to be bundling this. So what we've done today, the kit that you've seen, if you go to amyhowardhome.com and click products, you can click on shop this look, and we've bundled all these together for you with a couple of miniatures of the wax and the clean slate. So I'm going to continue to put just a little bit of that on here. Now I want to show you, it's going to have to dry. You can see I don't have 100% coverage. It's not totally opaque yet. So see how I can still see the stripes in there? I'm not letting that bother me. I'm going to let this dry down about an hour because it is the upholstery and it'll hold the moisture more with the batting underneath. I'm going to make sure that I sand it with 400 sandpaper after it's dried, and then come back and put on a second coat. It's not going to be necessary to do more than 2 coats. And then sand it again after that second coat has dried, and then I'm ready to wax it. So now I want to show you my chair because I have to show you a part of it to really explain what it was that we did. So I'm going to move this over and reveal the other half. Now, isn't this fun? I'm going to leave it where you can see a little bit of that fabric. Look at this. Now, I painted the chair frame and the seat and the R-pads the same color. One, it made it a lot easier to work with because I didn't have to come in and stripe this out, but I love the look of it. I think it makes it look more chic, more solid, more up-to-date. But then when I started to think about painting the back, I thought it would be fun to do it in the Bauhaus. But here's the other thing that I came up with, and you'll do this a lot of times as you're working on a piece. You might want to conceptualize what it could look like in the beginning, but always as I've worked on a project, I'll think of ideas and then I'll add it as I'm working on it. So always know that that's an option. So I painted all of the back Bauhaus buff, and then I just took some regular painter's tape and I taped it off just on this back. I laid the tape on the fabric and I laid another piece of tape here, and I just mixed up the Selznick gray with black, and I made a little darker value color of what I painted my frame and my seat. So see, that added just a little bit more interest. When I come back to finish the other half, I'm gonna make this stripe a little larger, and I'm gonna tape it off and add it to where I can have this small pinstripe. So see, don't you love that look? Now here's something else I decided to do this morning. I did not wax the seat. I waxed the frame and I buffed it so there's a little bit of a sheen. A lot of people don't realize, they think all chalk-based paints have to be sealed. That's one of the great differences about the Amy Howard at Home chalk-based paint. One step, you do not have to seal it. It won't come off. So that way I did sand it, but it's nice and soft. And you know what? One of the most expensive fabrics you can buy is Sunbrella. It's made because you can use it outdoors. The great thing about this is you can use this outdoors too. So remember, we talk about painting outdoor cushions or chairs. It's very easy to be able to use the same process that we did, and then that way you can use it outside.
Amy, we have a question from Sandy. Do you spray water in between the coats and after you sand?
It's not necessary to spray water in between coats. The only reason we spray water is in the very beginning we mist the chair with water, because that opens the fiber of the fabric and that allows that paint to be able to adhere. Once we've put that first coat of paint on, it's not necessary to spray it anymore. The other thing is, after you do spray it, if you're spraying this, sadly, I could spray this chair probably in, what, 20 minutes? I could be done with it. And then that way I'll allow it to dry about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and come back and sand it and then spray it again and you're done. So if it's a process you want to do it quicker, spraying's definitely the way to go. But if you're like me and you just enjoy painting and you want to be able to have that brush and work with it, it's great too. But here's the caveat, let's say if this chair was vinyl and I was going to be painting it, I would definitely spray it, because the vinyl is smooth, and that way the brush strokes would show up, have a tendency to, when you're brushing it on. Spraying's much more the way to go.
Do you use soap and water to spot clean?
You do, okay, the question was, do you use soap and water to spot clean? After you've put this wax on, now, I'm gonna show you what I did. So this here, if you can get a close-up, Sharon, this is basically what the fabric feels like without any of the wax on it. It feels great. I could, this could have a tendency to stain just a little bit, but I could just take some soap and water and clean it. But now the back of it, you'll see, actually has the Mind Your Own Beeswax on it. So I would take just a little bit of this beeswax, and I'll put some on a rag, and basically just kind of come back and spread it out over here like this. Allow it to dry about 15 minutes, and then just buff it. So I could literally take a glass of red wine, pour this over it, it's gonna shrivel right up, and I'm just gonna wipe it off. So what a great technique for you to be able to use on your kitchen chairs. You don't have to worry about them getting dirty or little people's fingers getting on it. It's not gonna be a problem, you just wipe it off. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, is it necessary to wax fabric for it to tolerate the outdoors?
I would, if you're trying to make it tolerate the outdoors, just a very thin coat of this Mind Your Own Beeswax. It makes it supple again. The combination of these three things when you're painting fabric, or let's say four things. Misting the fabric first, making sure you thin the paint 20%. Make sure that you're sanding in between coats with 400 and then sealing it with the wax. The wax makes it more supple. Those are four things for success when you're going to be painting upholstery. So thank you again for tuning in today. We're going to continue to answer your questions about painting this Bergere chair. Hopefully you saw it was a major transformation, and guess what? This is something that you can do at home too. We love seeing your before and afters. Please hashtag Amy Howard Home so that way we can see them, and hopefully it'll be one that we'll be sharing with all of our people, and you'll inspire them as well, because it's your turn to go enjoy the breaking.